Hey everyone, I thought I'd take a little time here and talk a little bit about using the Behringer XR18 as the front end to your DAW and to your streaming and video recording software, specifically going into OBS. Some of you may have considered using this, and it's a little tough to wrap your head around. I think that it's there's so much flexibility with this that it can get a little complicated to use. So what I needed to do was to have lots of inputs and be able to not only use that to record with in a DAW, but to also get a mix of that to use in OBS if I wanted to play a certain keyboard or guitar. And using OBS previously, I found that having different audio inputs, while it's doable, created a monitoring problem. A lot of times it was hard to tell exactly what the levels were. So you could have a couple of things pre-mixed coming in through your interface, and then you can have some audio sources on your computer, and it sounds real good. And then when you go back and listen to it, you realize, well, maybe the audio from the computer was too loud in comparison to what was coming in from your interface, or vice versa. And you can tweak it and you can get it to a point where it seems to work, but it's just too easy to mess up and to find yourself wondering what went wrong because you tweaked something or you touched one control. So my idea was to try to get everything coming in through this Behringer. I did it for a while and I had some problems with it, and then I went back to using an analog board, and now I came back to using the Behringer because I figured it's got to work. I got to be able to figure this out. And so I got a few tips for you if you're thinking of doing the same thing. First of all, if you're using the XR18 as a DAW, as your front end to a DAW, there's really not much you have to do as long as you can hear what you need to hear. Use the Behringer XR18 as the audio input and output to your computer. Basically, your DAW will just take the signal right after the input gain and shoot it into Logic or Pro Tools or whatever you're using. So the mixer really is just being used to monitor things as kind of like a zero latency mix. You can also route your computer audio and monitor from the Behringer XR18. And what I did was routed that into the auxiliary inputs. I believe that's 17 and 18. You can do that through USB, through the little matrix they have for the input and outputs. So that's something you could do. So using it that way is relatively straightforward, but using it in OBS was a little more of a challenge. What I had to do, I'll kind of describe a little bit what I did. I created a submix on buses 5 and 6. So everything that was coming into the mixer, I assigned to bus 5 and 6 as if I was sending it to an auxiliary out for monitoring or something like that. The input channels on the main part of the mixer I have turned down, and everything is going into this 5-6 mix. The output of this mix is going into the computer, going into USB 1 and 2 into the computer. That's what OBS says, oh, here's the audio coming in from the computer. So it's a mix of everything, and I can tell what the relative volumes are of each thing. And the video, when I'm playing the audio from any videos that I'm reacting to from my reaction channel, that's coming in through the auxiliary, and I have that coming in on 5 and 6. And I also am using that to feed to the computer so that the relative volume I hear of the audio playback from any video that I'm listening to is relatively, the volumes are matched to whatever I'm playing live, whether it's a keyboard or a guitar or something like that. So that seems to work really well. I did have to compensate by delaying the audio a little bit in OSB by about 200 milliseconds, but I'm going to talk about that right now. So let's take a look. So right here you have, let's see if we can maximize this. Okay, so right here we have the XR Edit app, and I have it hooked up through Ethernet. And that poses some challenges too, because I've found that if you don't know what the Ethernet, what the address is, it's hard to figure out what to do. I think it defaults to a certain number if you reset the networking card on the XR18. But other than that, if you're looking for it on Ethernet, it's a little bit of a challenge. My workaround was to connect it to my laptop, and for some reason my laptop found the Ethernet right away. Actually, no, you know what it was? After I reset, if you take a paper clip, there's a little tiny hole on the front of the Behringer, just hold it for about 3 or 4 seconds, it resets the networking card, and then all of a sudden the XR edits found it. So actually it had nothing to do with the laptop. It was just a coincidence that it started working at that point because I had reset it. So the point is, connect it by Ethernet. That's one little can of worms that you may get. And if you can't find it on Ethernet, just reset it on the Behringer, and then it should. I mean, the idea is that if you have the Ethernet going into a router or a switcher and going into your computer, if everything is working right, the minute you open up XR, it should find it on Ethernet. And if you're not finding it, reset it. So anyway, that was one of the challenges. So here we go with the XR edit. So this is the main input. If I was using this as a PA system, these would be the volumes going out to the master volume that you would use. And then if you had submixes going to your monitors, you'd have bus 1, bus 2, bus 3, bus 4. You can have those buses then assigned to your outputs, your auxiliary outputs on the Behringer, and run them to your 6 different monitors or whatever configuration you have. What I have done here is I've used bus 5 and 6, and if you can see right there, I have them stereo linked. So I have a stereo mix. So you can see the difference. When you hit main left right, this is your main volumes coming out through your main left and right output. When you hit bus 5, 6 over here, this no longer represents the volumes going out through your main mix. These are the sends to those buses. So what I have here, I have 2 mics. I have one mic over here, which is my vocal mic, which you're hearing me through right now. I have another mic right over here, which is muted, and that goes to an amp, a guitar amp I have back there in case I want to record anything through that. I don't know if you can see here, I've got a DX7, a sequential 6-track, Behringer UBXA. So those are all available here, but I'm not using them. When I'm doing any kind of reactions, I'm really just using one keyboard, this Roland VR09, which has a kind of a piano and a string sound I have layered. There's a couple other synths here and some drum machines over here. And then this guitar channel over here is going into direct in from a Strymon Iridium. So when I just want to go straight in, I'm just going in through there. Then this is the computer audio. So this is what I talked about before. This is the audio coming out of the computer. So right now, if I play something on YouTube or something like that, I should be able to hear it. So what I'm going to do here is play some audio from the computer, and you can get an idea of how that works. So this is from my reaction channel. She will promise you paradise. And this fader right here will control with those fingers wrapped around your neck, the audio coming from the computer. Cold as ice, cold as ice. So you slide that fader, and there it goes. So that's where I can monitor audio, whether I'm just playing stuff back or whether I'm using Logic or whatever. If I'm using Logic, I can just go to the main and turn this up to hear what's going on. Either way will work. Logic is not, or Pro Tools will not be affected by this because it's tapping the signal right as it comes into the interface. You have your input gain, and then it shoots it right into your DAW. So this will not mess with anything there, and it won't limit what you're doing with your DAW. So anyway, that's what we have here. How do we get it to work? Let's take a look at this. And by the way, let me show you the setup here. Let me play a little bit of this. So what I have, I've got a bunch of synths and keyboards, running them between a MIDI snake and an audio snake into the Behringer. So the idea was that I could use it standalone. I don't need to have the computer on to use it. Above it, I have a Motu MIDI Express XT. Again, that can be used standalone too. And then it's all running into the computer over here. So the idea is that I can stream, I can play, I can do everything right from here and control everything right there. So everything is running in to the Behringer over there. The Behringer is running its Ethernet out. You don't have to use Ethernet. You can use the internal Wi-Fi router on there. And the only problem is that you have to go into your computer and connect to that Wi-Fi network. So you lose your internet connection if for some reason you're streaming videos or whatever like that. That's not going to work for you. So the Ethernet is the best way. You can either use a router, and remember with the Behringer, you can't just take this Ethernet output and plug it into your computer. It has to go through a router or a switcher. And what's the difference? The router has a little Wi-Fi antenna on it where you can wirelessly connect, and the switcher just has a wired connection. So you can get them for about 30 bucks. That's what I'm using. So that's what we have there. If we take a look at the routing, there's a spot on the over here that says in and out, and you can see that opens up this routing here. So you have your input routing, your USB routing. So the inputs, these channel 1 you can see here goes, analog input 1 goes to channel 1. Analog input 2 goes to channel 2. So, you know, with a digital mixer, you can assign what physical input, where it goes, what channel it goes to. So you can switch things around if you want. But as you can see here, this is pretty ordered. Analog input 1 goes to channel 1 in the mixer, and everything consecutively goes on like that. That's pretty easy. USB returns are the channels coming back from the computer. And what we have here is basically everything set. And by the way, these colors actually mean stuff. If you hit one of these things, can you see where it is? Where did it open? It's not opening here. But either way, these little circles, these assignments, can be post-fader, pre-fader, pre-mute, pre-EQ, post-EQ. You can do whatever you want. Right now, blue means post-fader, which means whatever I do on the fader, you'll hear. Whereas if you tap it before the fader, well, you'll hear the EQs and stuff, but you won't hear the volume change out of the main mix. That's what you'd use for like an auxiliary send to a monitor. Anyway, so these are set for post-fader. But notice down here, auxiliary left and right. Okay, these two things over here are normally set for USB input 17 and 18. But I have them set now for 1 and 2. 1 and 2 is like the default USB input and output to the computer. So if you feed signal to USB 1 and 2, that's what the computer says is, okay, this is the audio I'm going to use for left and right for stereo. And if you have 1 and 2 coming out of the computer into here, that's what it's going to use for anything you're playing on the computer, any stereo output. Remember, your DAW is going to do something a little different with the Behringer. Your DAW can see every one of these 18 channels and select them discretely. OSB, which is the video recording software, can't see those. You can set discrete tracks in OSB and record things on different tracks if you want with different inputs. That's not how I have it set up here. I found that to be more trouble than it's worth, because I'd go back into DaVinci and I would be able to adjust volumes after the fact. This way I hear what's going on and I don't have to do any of that. It just prints at the levels I want. So hopefully that makes sense. Everything's coming back into the machine. Auxiliary left and right are coming into 1 and 2 instead of 17 and 18. Okay. My USB sends doing the same thing. Bus 4 and 5 are going out now, are set to go out to USB 1 and 2, and all of these have been changed to post fader. You can see on the bottom here, I don't know, it's kind of small, but these are all, you know, analog, input and mute, pre-EQ, post-EQ. So you can set where you want to tap this signal. So these are post faders. So the idea is that any movements I make on these faders going into OBS will be heard by OBS and will be heard by me here. So I hear the exact relative volumes of everything that that's going into OBS. My main outputs are just main left and right. I am monitoring out of my main outputs going into a little headphone amp because my daughter does the reactions with me, so we can both listen. So I can hear everything that I need to hear on here. Let's see. I have, like I said, the idea that I was trying for here is that I want to be able to use these synths and drum machines without having to turn the computer on every time. And that was the limitation I had years ago. When I'm going through an interface with the older stuff, I had to listen, I had to turn on the computer. And sometimes I found that I don't want to be forced to think that I'm recording something, or I don't want to be distracted by saying, oh, you know, let me upgrade this, let me download this, let me see what's going on, you know, in the world. Sometimes I don't want the computer on. So anyway, that was the plan. So with the MIDI system that I'm using right now, you can set up presets, and those presets are all available when the computer is off. So you can play without, you know, worrying if you got a big setup. If you only have 1 or 2 MIDI keyboards, I guess it wouldn't really matter. But if you got a bunch of stuff, I want to be able to fool around with everything. And my MIDI is all set up so that I can use any one of these as a controller. So if I'm playing something on the old Sequential Circuit 6-track up there, I want to feel those crummy keys. It's part of the charm of the instrument. And when I'm playing the DX7, I want to feel those really, really cool keys. So that's what I did. Let me take a look at Clockworks here. And so Clockworks is the MIDI system that I'm using. That's Motu. And there are routings here where you can just physically route cables to whatever, and then you can save them as presets. And these are the banks of presets. And over here you have factory presets. So you've got the factory presets could be a great starting point to do whatever you want to do. You're going to find really a lot of ghosts in the machine between synthesizers. I find that sometimes, even though I'm using different ports, there's 8 different ports coming out of this interface, having one keyboard in makes another one malfunction, even though they're on different ports, different MIDI channels. It's a crazy thing. So you can go through this mutings, and you can mute all sorts of information on each channel. You can map things on channels. I'm playing on this MIDI channel on this one, but I want it to go to another MIDI channel for the other one. There's a million things you can do. So that's the second half of what I'm doing here using the Motu MIDI Express. Let's see what else we can cover here. Let's see if we have... let's turn on some of these keyboards here and see. You're obviously hearing my voice. Can you hear the guitar? Let's see. Yeah, so this is just direct. So you have the guitar there if you want to mess around with it. The keyboard should be, what do we have it on here? Let's go to this route. You should be hearing the VR09. I think it's, oh, you know what? It's one of those stupid things that the keyboard powers off when it's been on for a while. So if you can see on there, there's the keyboards. And I can... See, that's a nice thing. Now, I can hear how loud the keyboards are in relation to my voice. I can hear how loud the guitar is in relation to my voice, so I already know what's going to be going into OBS. That Strymon, it sounds... I know you can tweak it and make it sound a little better. It does sound a little thin, but it just gives me something to work with. There's the clean sound. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, that's what we got here. We have the Behringer XR18 used as a front end for your DAW, which is pretty foolproof. All you have to do is go and change the routing over here so that you get 1 and 2 coming into USB input. Yeah, 1 and 2 assigned to input for a 1718, because this is the auxiliary input 17 and 18. So this controls your playback. So when you're listening through your headphones, then if you're going to start using it for OBS, you're going to create a submix, and in this case on 5 and 6, and you're going to route it, the outputs to that, to 1 and 2, and you know you're gonna be able to send that right into OBS. If you want to monitor everything here that you're hearing on the computer, you'll use this 1718, which is your auxiliary in and out. I have it labeled as computer audio. But when you go back to OBS, doing it this way, you may see a little out of sync between your voice and the video. And I found that in OBS, let's bring it over here. There's OBS. I found that in the advanced audio properties, I had to, you can see right here, I had to change the audio input capture to minus, take it down 200 milliseconds to sync offset. So that seemed to make everything work just dandy. So anyway, there you go. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. If you have any questions or anything, let me know. I'm certainly not an expert on this stuff. I have to tell you, figuring this out almost broke my brain. You know, look, I'm a smart guy and I should be able to figure this stuff out. But the problem is there's not documentation. When you have something like this that's so flexible, you know, you can push it into places that nobody thought about going. So there's no explanation in the manual. You know, I went online and tried to find some things about how to do it, and I did find something about creating that auxiliary mix, and I thought, okay, that's a good idea. And then because I was trying to get the main mix going in there, and it wasn't coming out. And by the way, the main mix right here, if I turn these faders up, this is stuff I'm just going to hear in my headphones. It's not stuff going to OBS. And that was one of the problems I was having before, is that the levels I was doing here were not reflecting what was happening with OBS. So this seems to work pretty good. If somebody has another solution where they've done something like this and it's easier, let me know. That would be great. So anyway, that's that. So hopefully you can get a little something out of this, and it'll help you figure out what you're doing too. So anyway, that's it. Do remember to like and subscribe. We have a reaction channel, Errol Reacts, and go there and check some stuff out. I'm going to be doing a few more, kind of expanding into more music theory and more things, a little more delving deeper a little bit into music other than reactions. So that should be coming up pretty soon. So anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.